Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 345 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And here at the Unpopular Podcast, I'm not really asking you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. So on Thursday, we had the NBA draft. The draft is pretty much the signification of the end of the last season, the beginning of the next. Well, yes, I understand that the season obviously doesn't start tomorrow or doesn't start directly after the draft. It is pretty much the signal that, okay, last season is over with. Now let's get to this season. And watching the NBA draft and seeing who got picked, and of course we'll talk about some winners, some questionable decisions, some steals in the draft. Exactly what I thought was going to happen in this draft, as far as there's a big dog, and of course the big dog was Victor Wembanyama. That he was I'm not going to say the steal, he was the player. There's always, not always, but in a draft, there's usually one player that stands out above the rest, and that one player usually is a generational talent. We use that phrase a lot. And what does that mean? Generational talent. We use that phrase. We talked about LeBron James, generational talent. We talked about Zion Williamson as a generational talent. What is a generational talent? A generational talent is a player that once in a generation, or is so vastly different from everyone else in a good way that he could possibly be not only, or I'm not going to say the best player in the NBA or best player in whatever league at a certain point, but he is that player that can change the fortune of a franchise. He is that player that you draft him, he can be amongst the top players in the league fairly quickly. And that was Victor Wembanyama. And when people were talking, hell, I did it too. When people were talking about the draft going in, there's a reason why they talked from one or from two down, like who was going to go second, who was going to go third, because this was probably the first draft since, I don't know, maybe LeBron's draft, where it was so clear. There was not one. I actually looked before the draft and everything. There was not one media pundit. There was not one mock draft. There was not one big board that did not have Victor Wembanyama. And this is one of those times where if you had somebody other than Victor going number one, your credits or your viewpoint probably was looked lesser, because again, it's Victor and nobody else. And we can talk about steals of the draft, winners of the draft, this, that, and the third, and that's of course what we're going to talk about. But of course, let's talk about what the Spurs are getting. What the Spurs, of course, who drafted Victor number one, what they're getting. One of the biggest reasons and one of the biggest things that's not talked about when the Spurs drafted Tim Duncan. They had a bad season. I think David Robinson was hurt the year before. But you're bringing in a player as great as Tim Duncan, and you're pairing him alongside a great coach in Greg Popovich, a great player in David Robinson. Now, I'm not saying that David Robinson and Greg Popovich made Tim Duncan, but what I'm saying is it is so rare, and it's such a cheat code when you get drafted to the right organization, or when you get drafted to the organization that fits you perfectly. Trust and believe, if Tim Duncan never went to the Spurs, I don't know the fortune, or I don't know how we would look at the Spurs today, because I definitely don't think they'd have as many championships. Even though, yes, Greg Popovich is a great coach, I don't think he would have as many or any at that point if it wasn't for Tim Duncan. So we would look at the Spurs so differently, but the Spurs are getting a player that can contribute to winning day one. And I'm not saying contribute to winning as far as like maybe win 15, 16 games. I don't think that the Spurs are going to make the playoffs with Victor Wembanyama year one. But I think that the skill set that he has and putting him in the organization that is the Spurs, they will be in contention for playoff spots in years to come, or actually probably after next year. That's now, again, the only concern that I have about Victor is, of course, his size. The same concern that I had about Chet Holmgren, the same concern that I had about Porzingis. Victor is a very thin individual. Now, he's tall as hell. He's 7'4", and he has a skill set as a 7'4" center that a lot of guards. He has better handles than a lot of guards, better shots than a lot of guards. He is a freak of nature. But he is a very thin player, and I think that the game plan around him is to be as physical as you can with him. I'm interested to see what happens when he goes up against a Joel Embiid, when he goes up against Nikola Jokic, some of the of course the premier bigs in the league, but size wise and strength wise, some of the stronger bigs. I'm interested to see that, because skill set wise and talent wise, Victor is up there. He is. There's a reason why all you've heard is generational talent. They just don't say that. They just don't say he. They just don't give that title out. But Victor is all of that. Victor is a generational talent, and I am interested to see just how drastically different and how much better he makes the Spurs. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that that's not going to happen. I think he makes the Spurs drastically better. And when I mean drastically better, I mean, again, year one, they're going to be contending for a playoff spot. I don't think that they could make, he's so good. Remember, the Spurs were so bad. They got the number 1 overall pick. There wasn't due to no trades or anything. Victor Wembanyama is projected to be so good that I think year one, they can make it at least to the play-in. That's how good he is. Again, we need to see with health and everything, but that once in a generational talent thing, that's real. That's real. And the Spurs got him. The Spurs got him. And again, fit matters. I talk about that all the time. Fit matters. And when we talk about once in a generational talent, right? Yes, that matter. Like, yes, your talent and your skill set will always supersede anything, and will always shine when it needs to shine. But, and this is no offense to other organizations, but it's just real. Victor, you could not have fallen in a better spot. Like, I don't think it would have worked as well if he went to Charlotte, if he went to Houston, if he went to Detroit, if he went to Washington, if he went to Utah. I just don't think it would have worked as seamlessly as it seems to, or it seemingly will work in San Antonio. And that's no offense to those organizations, it's just truth. I think, again, being able, or having Greg Popovich, having coached Tim Duncan, having coached David Robinson, having that success and understanding how to use bigs and understanding how to use a big that's not from the United States and a once in a generational talent. Tim Duncan was that as well. And as we see, 5 championships later, that's exactly what he was. So I'm excited to see Victor and how he fits with, or how seamlessly it's going to be the transition from, the G League to or France team to the NBA, and I'm interested to see how he fares against players like Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid and Rudy Gobert and stuff like that. So I'm excited. And of course, talking about the draft, and one thing that I talked about outside of Victor was it went exactly how I thought it would go. There is once in a generational player, and there's a bunch of other players. And don't get me wrong. First of all, congratulations to everyone that got drafted. Everyone that got drafted deserves to be drafted. And everyone that didn't get drafted, that doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be drafted. That doesn't mean that you're not good. It just means that you just didn't get drafted. Look at players like Gabe Vincent. Look at players like Max Strus, Fred VanVleet. It doesn't matter. You can be very successful in the league and not be drafted. I see a bunch of players. Leaky Black. There's a bunch of Sadego from UConn. A bunch of players that didn't get drafted but are signing two-way contracts. Drew Timme signing two-way contracts or signing exhibition contracts. Just, shine. Do the best that you can. And congratulations for getting that two-way contract. Congratulations to all the players, both round 1 and round 2, for getting drafted. It is definitely a very limited section of the world of people that can say they've been drafted or can say that they've been in the NBA. So congratulations to you guys. And this is no disrespect when I say it, but it was Victor Wembanyama, and then it was everyone else. Now, yes, Brandon Miller, Scoot, Amin Thompson, Ashur Thompson. Of course, they're great players. All the players that got drafted are good players. But when we to dissect the draft, you have to understand what the draft is, and what the goal of the draft is, and why people fall, why people sit, why people get elevated. The draft is the first chance that you get to really not just work on the present, or not just improve on the present with your team, but improve on the future. You don't draft now again, someone like Victor Wembanyama, someone like someone like a LeBron James, someone like a Kevin Durant. You draft, of course, for the now and for the future, but the NBA is in such a great place as far as the talent level. Every team, whether terrible or Denver Nuggets, is talented. Now, again, yes, some are more talented than others, obviously, but every team is talented. We're in an age where the talent level is not as wide as it is. We kind of saw that in college basketball. We're seeing that in the NBA as well. Every team, hell, the Portland Trailblazers got the 3rd overall pick, and we'll talk about them later. They also have Damian Lillard. Orlando Magic, who we'll talk about also, they had the 6th overall pick. They have Paolo Banchero. They have Jalen Suggs. They have solid pieces. So the talent level in the NBA is so much better for all teams that the draft, you're not really drafting for the now all the time. You're drafting for the future and to make your team better. Now, yes, you would hope that these draft picks can help the team now, but you're drafting a pick to hopefully be the face of the franchise one day. And you're also drafting to fill holes that you have in your team and hope that said player fits said hole, which is why you see every draft pick team needs. You're filling holes. And the biggest hole that the Spurs have was just to get better players. They have good players. I mean, Keldon Johnson's pretty good. But you have the staple. Now, the Hornets, they had to figure out what they were going to do. Are they going to go? I think probably the second best player in the draft was Scoot Henderson. However, when you have LaMelo Ball, do you want to get another bit or another ball dominant guard? And they went with Brandon Miller, who of course is a forward and who's been on the runs or been on the media rounds pretty much saying Paul George is his GOAT. Hey, that's his GOAT. But, you fill in holes and you try to incorporate players to fill in holes. And there are some really good players. There's some players that fell that I was a little surprised about. But looking at this draft, man, I don't know if there's any franchise-changing players outside of Victor Wembanyama. I mean, the closest that I could see is probably Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson. I think Scoot Henderson definitely has a chance to, but it also to do that. It also matters. Fit matters, and it also matters where you get drafted. Are the Thompson brothers, which shouts out to them, the first brothers and I think in NBA history to get drafted back to back. Are they going to be able to change the fortunes of Houston and Detroit, two teams that have been bottom feeding teams for a minute now? Scoot Henderson has all the characteristics and all the skill set to change the organization, but is he going to be able to change the fortune of a Portland Trailblazers team that has a marquee player and still can't get it right? So, it's interesting. It was interesting to see again, the type of or the fact of there's a lot of good players. I don't know if there's great players. I don't know how great Brandon Miller is going to be. I don't know how great Anthony Black is going to be. But they are good players. Let me just say that. I think there was one great player, and that's why we didn't talk about him that much in mock drafts or that, because you just knew. We know who Victor was, and we knew. I mean, again, they just don't say once in a generation. They just don't give that title to anyone. So, but in the draft, what I want to do is I want to talk about some winners, some losers, and I'm not going to call it losers. I'm going to say questionable decisions. And who are some steals in the draft? Let's start on a positive note. Let's start on the winners. Outside of course, the Spurs. The Spurs are the big winner for getting the number 1 overall pick. One of the winners that I'm picking is Miami. Now, it was a little head-scratching. Don't get me wrong. It was a little head-scratching picking Jaime Jaquez Jr. at the 18th pick, especially when a lot of people had him as a second-round talent. And there's a bunch of people that went second round that were first-round talents. But one of the reasons why I say is a winner is, and I talked about this before, I think people get so attached and so loyal to draft comps and so loyal to scouting reports that they don't watch the tape themselves. I think I see that a lot, and I felt this to an extreme when we talk about the NFL draft. Yes, I understand that there's 7 rounds. I understand that a lot of people don't. It's hard to watch every single player, right? But when we talk about one of the biggest reasons why I have the Miami Heat as a winner is because when you look at Jaime Jaquez play at UCLA, he was a incredible player, an incredible scoring option, a leader. To me, he fits the Miami Heat culture. I understand a lot of people, and at first when I was like, "Whoa, okay," I thought it was a little bit of a reach, but I did like the fit, and especially for a team that struggles offensively, that's Jaime Jaquez. He is an offensive weapon, and I think that he was really good, especially at UCLA, and I think he's going to be really good for Miami. I do agree that it is sort of a reach, but to me, you get a player that fits your organization and fits your culture perfectly. So I think that the Miami Heat is a winner. Honestly, I also think that Golden State is a winner. I mean, not Golden State. The Wizards, the Washington Wizards. And not just for the draft. We'll talk about the trade a little bit later, but I don't know. In fact, I'm going to try to say this man's name. This man's name is Bial Kolbali. I know I messed your name up, bro, and I truly apologize. But he was a teammate to Victor Wembanyama, and Washington is in a full rebuild. Now, you can also put them on the losers thing because they're a year too late, but at least they started. And you got a good draft pick. I mean, Washington has a bunch of needs at this point, and you traded the number 7 pick, or you traded the number 8 pick for the number 7, just a pick swap. And you get Mr. Kalbali. I know I said it wrong. It is what it is. 6'6" player. There's a very good chance that you're going to lose, or you're not going to be able to re-sign Kuzma. So he can play the forward position. We'll talk about the guard position in a second. But on top of that, there was more that came out about the Bradley Beal trade. Washington gets 4 second-round or 7 second-round picks and 4 first-round pick swaps with Phoenix, which is damn. That's a haul. Especially, you pretty much put yourself in the Oklahoma City realm as far as picks. So I do think that they are a winner, especially when it comes out just the compensation that you got for Bradley Beal. Because originally I just thought it just said multiple picks, and I'm like, what the hell is what? But they did get a haul. Another winner, I think, is the New Orleans Pelicans. I think that they had one of the, well, let me, oh, damn, I am just going crazy with the mic. I apologize, guys. Okay. I don't know if I want to put them as a winner or a sleeper. I'm going to put them as a sleeper. I'll put them as a sleeper. Another winner, I think, is Toronto. Again, you draft. The reason for the draft, of course, is to improve in areas that you need improvement. And as we know, one of the biggest areas of improvement that Toronto needed was shot making. They were one of the worst teams as far as catch and shoot, as far as 3-point percentage. They just were not good. And you end up getting the best 3-point shooter in Grady Dick. You get him in the draft at 13. That is a perfect fit. Kind of like it's you address a need. And the good thing about Grady Dick and the good thing about the Toronto Raptors is if they're able to, keep Pascal Siakam. We'll see with the guard position about Fred VanVleet, but you're able to. He's not really needed for much outside of shooting. He can play more of an advanced Duncan Robinson role. So I think that the Toronto Raptors is a winner as well. On top of that, you get you get a player that understands how to win and understands, how, even though he's not going to be a number 1 option or number 2 option, it was a very integral piece in Kansas. So I think it was a good move, man. It was a good move as far as Toronto getting their player. And the last winner I'll talk about, I'll give 3 winners, are the Portland Trail Blazers. Again, we will talk about the Damian Lillard aspect a little bit later in the show. I'm just talking about the picks. And you got the second best player in a lot of people's opinion in the draft in Scoot Henderson. And he is a player that he could possibly be a franchise-changing player. He played for the Ignite, G League Ignite. He played for, or he's a physical specimen. He is a Russell Westbrook with a better jump shot. I heard Russell Westbrook in UCLA pretty much, with the physical. He's just bigger than everyone else, and he is an athletic freak. And now that he's under the mentorship and tutelage of Steph Curry, his shot could possibly get better. On top of that, you get Chris Murray, who was one of the best 3-point shooters in college, and of course the brother to Keegan Murray. The Portland Trailblazers, man, they addressed what they needed to address, and they also got Ryan Rupert, who is a forward, a guard. They're building this team. The Portland Trailblazers are nowhere close to contending for a championship, but you'd have laid down the foundation to be a better team. Again, we'll talk about Damian Lillard in a second. See what happens with Grant. This could be the foundation of a good team moving forward. It's just patience. And you got, in my opinion, the second best player at 3. So those are probably the winners that I have in the draft. I'm not going to go as far as say losers, but what I will do is I'm going to say head-scratching decisions. And my first head-scratching decision actually has to go with the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic team currently, they drafted first. Again, congratulations to everyone that get drafted. This is no offense to you guys. I think you deserve to be drafted. The Orlando Magic at 6 drafted Anthony Black, who is a guard, of course, from Arkansas. They also, at the 11th pick, drafted Jet Howard, who was from Michigan, I think, Juwan Howard's son. So the Orlando Magic, they draft. I'm really focusing on the 6th pick, which is Anthony Black, who is a guard. Here's the thing. Here's the current guard rotation for the Orlando Magic. Caleb Houston, even though he's Jalen Suggs, Kayvon Harris, Michael Carter-Williams, Gary Harris, Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, and now Anthony Black. Not to mention you have Bol, who likes to handle the ball a lot, and you have Paolo Banchero, who is pretty much a point forward. My thing is, what direction are you going in? Anthony Black is an incredible player. Don't get me wrong. I think that he was one of the better guards, obviously, in the draft, being able to go, from Arkansas. I think he would have been really, before the events that happened before the trade, I was looking forward to seeing him maybe in Washington. But I just don't know the direction you're going in, because now you're stockpiling guards. You can kind of say the same thing about Detroit getting Azure Thompson. Like, yeah, he's a great player, don't get me wrong, but what are you doing? You just got Jaden Ivey the year before. You also have Killian Hayes. You also have what's his name? Cade Cunningham. So it's like I don't know what the Magic are doing. I don't. And I guess number 2, I kind of spoiled it. Number 2 would also be the Detroit Pistons. It's just, to me, the draft picks that they have, and don't get me wrong, I really like the Thompson brother. I really like him, and I really like the player of Anthony Black. I like those picks. I just don't like where they went, because it's like, how are you going to contribute when you have, again, there's only one basketball, and you have a team full of guards and a team full of people that thrive with the ball in their hand, as i.e. Azure Thompson. So it was just confusing to me. I guess my first 2 questionable decisions where it was the Orlando Magic and Detroit Pistons. Like I don't understand with the amount of guards they already have in the team why you get. I understand that Thompson is a guard forward for Detroit, but for Orlando, Anthony Anthony Black is the full definition of a guard. I don't. There ain't nothing to that. Ain't nothing else. Like he is. How tall is he? He is 6'5", and Jet Howard. I think that he was more of a second round pick or second round talent. Again, I could be wrong. He was really good at Michigan. Don't get me wrong. I just think that he was a second round talent. So I don't know, man. I'm just left with more question marks about the organizations moving forward after the draft. And to me, if you have more question marks going out of the draft than coming in, that I'm not going to say a loser. I'm not going to go as far as it's just questionable to me. And another questionable decision, in my opinion, was Golden State at 19 getting Brandon Podziemski. Now, from Santa Clara. Now, I understand the Golden State way. And again, we will talk about the Jordan Poole trade a little bit later. But all year, one of the biggest concerns and biggest hindrances to Golden State was the lack of size and the lack of athletic size. Now, I hear all the rumors about Jonathan Kuminga growing. I'm not gonna attach myself to those rumors because I don't know if they're true or not. But you're getting a 6'5", pretty much guard, and there was a bunch of players, and not to mention, I understand that you're getting Porzingis, I apologize, for his shooting ability. I get that. But you needed a bunch of size. And I will say this, I love their pick that they got, with the trade and everything. They traded Trace Jackson Davis, a 6'8" forward / center. I do like that. I like the athleticism that he brings, and I think that is a very good pick as far as he's a round one talent that you got in the second round. But there was just to me, you just had more. You had more issues that needed to be addressed. Yes, I understand that you can't have enough or you can't have too much shooting, but Golden State's biggest issue is when they played up against the Lakers, they just did not have the size. And while I like Brandon Podziemski from Santa Clara, I like him, and I think he's an incredible shooter, and I think his shooting, especially alongside Steph Clay, will definitely enhance. I just don't know if it addresses their biggest issue. Actually, I do know it does not address their biggest issue, and that is athleticism and height. Now, yes, I understand that you're probably hoping for a big year, or now you're needing a big year now from someone like a Jonathan Kuminga, but I don't know, man. I just think that there was better pieces you could have got. Like you could have got Noah Conley from Alabama. You could have got let me see, because you don't really have any height. You could have got James Naja'i from Spain. You could have got Leonard Miller from G League. You could have got Mohamed Gunay from Washington State. I just think there was better pieces that you could have got to address your needs. But hey, I could be wrong. That's just a questionable decision. And I know I wanted to keep it at 3, but I think an honorable mention questionable decision has to go to Memphis. We'll talk about the Marcus Smart trade in a second, but when you look at the trades that they made compared to the draft picks, it doesn't make much sense to me because why trade? I understand that um, you had to address, your guard position now, your backup guard position, and your forward position, seeing as though you have already come out and say that Dylan Brooks is not coming back under any circumstances, and I think getting G.G. Jackson was big from Jackson or from South Carolina. You get an uber athletic player, very raw, kind of like a Jonathan Kuminga as far as just rawness, or Jonathan Kuminga coming into the league, but and you get Tarek Bovreskivic from Turkey. I know I messed your name up, bro. I apologize. But my thing is G.G. Jackson that much better than Dylan Brooks? Or if that's the case, why not draft other, or why not get maybe I just don't know the direction that Memphis is going in. And that's the thing. If the players that you drafted, you had better versions of them, you just let them go. So I don't know. But I think the biggest question marks, of course, to me was Orlando, Detroit, and the first pick for Golden State. Now let's talk about steals of the draft. I think that everyone wants to get a Giannis. Everyone wants to get of course, Nikola Jokic, who was in the second round, of course, a Draymond Green. And the draft is not a science. I will say that. The draft is not a science. The number one pick doesn't always turn out to be their best player. Obviously, I mean, when you look at, I think Giannis was drafted in 2013 or something like that. He obviously wasn't the number one overall pick, and you see what he turned out to be. Kawhi Leonard was not the number one overall pick. You see what he turned out to be. Steph Curry was not the number one overall pick. You see what it turned out to be. The draft is not an always science, and there's always going to be steals. There's always going to be players that can emerge and be the best player in the draft and doesn't ultimately have to be number one. You can get him in the second round. It's just, who are the players that you look and say, that could be something interesting? And I'll give three names. Number one, I'm going to obviously go with where's he at? Obviously go with Cam Whitmore from Villanova. Cam Whitmore, he was projected to be a fourth or fifth pick. That's how good he was coming out of Villanova. I understand that he had, I guess, a medical situation, and that is what ultimately dropped him to 20th. But it kind of feels like the same thing that happened with Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. was a top tier talent. Michael Porter Jr. going into college was projected to be a number one overall pick. That's the type of talent that he garnishes, or that he has, let me say. But of course, due to injuries in Missouri, he fell in Denver's lap. And now you see how integral he was to their championship run this year. I'm not going to say that Cam Whitmore is going to be the key cog to a championship run for Houston, but I will say that Houston got a top five draft pick pretty much at 20, because they're saying it's because of medical history, or medical thing is kind of scary for teams. But Cam Whitmore out of Villanova, 6'5", he is an incredible shooter, incredibly offensive, gifted player, and he's from the crib. That to me can be a possible steal of the draft. If we talk about players, right, and we talk about anyone out of the top or lottery, if there's a player that could win Rookie of the Year or be in contention to Rookie of the Year that's out of the lottery, I would say Cam Whitmore, because he is a lottery talent, and he was projected to go top 10 at least. And you get him at 20. So, yeah. that's my number one pick, or my number one sleeper would probably be Cam Whitmore, seeing as where he fell. Actually, I have a couple of sleepers. Another one would be 14 at Jordan Hawkins. Jordan Hawkins possibly is the best shooter outside of probably Grady Dick. Probably possibly the best shooter in the draft and mature. He just won a national championship with UConn as their starting guard. Jordan, he is also from the crib. Have to show love. And you playing alongside or playing behind CJ McCollum is perfect for the Orlando or New Orleans Pelicans. I'm sorry. That's just a team that's in desperate need of shooting, because right now, outside of what Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum, they don't have a legit shooter on the team that they can depend on. They have people that can hit a shot, but they don't have a dependable shooter. And getting Jordan Hawkins, to me, fills that hole beautifully. And playing alongside of CJ McCollum, and we know about the maturity, and you're already getting a mature player in Jordan Hawkins. It's just perfect. So I have that, and I also again I have Cam Whitmore, I have Jordan Hawkins, and I have Derek Lively the second. Dallas is Derek Lively. I mean, you heard last night about the story of him growing up and coming up in basketball, and him and his moms, and just the hard road that it took to get to the get to Duke, get to the draft. When we talk about a young player that can really make a dent round or day one, I'm not saying that Derek Lively is going to make Dallas a championship contender. What I will say is he gives me incredible shades of JaVale McGee. And a lot of people look at JaVale McGee and only think of course, the Washington Wizards, JaVale McGee. But when I say JaVale McGee, I think about just the pure athleticism and height. I mean, Derek Lively is 7'1", and he's able to jump out the gym. He also has a jump shot. I just think he is going to do dividends, and he is going to be incredible and an incredible steal, especially at 12 for Dallas. I mean, I know Oklahoma City drafted him, and of course he got traded to Dallas, but that's a big pick, and that's somebody that I think if he was, which I don't think he would have been, of course, but if he was still available at 19, he would be perfect fit for Golden State. So getting for Dallas, now you're going to play alongside Luka Doncic, and that's nothing. Derek Lively, with his defense and his lob catching ability, he does not need the ball to make an impact. So I think that's a steal right there. And I guess my last steal, and the last thing I'm going to talk about before we move on from the draft, is Imani Bates at 49. To me, this is the reason why I have Imani Bates as a steal is because before all the off the court incidences, before the injuries, before not really working out in Memphis and then going to Eastern Michigan, Imani Bates was projected to be kind of like a Michael Porter Jr. again. He was projected to be a number 1 overall pick. Going into this year's or last year's, let's say, college season in Memphis, he was projected to be a one and done. Go to Memphis under Penny Hardaway's tutelage, and go on and be a number 1 overall pick. He had the skill set, he had the talent. I mean, we saw him at Rico Hines runs. We saw him practicing and playing alongside actual NBA players. And again, whatever happened in Memphis, it didn't work out. And then we know about the off the court issues. And now, being in Eastern Michigan, a number 1 overall talent dropped to 49 in the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm interested to see what he looks like. Now, yes, defense wise, not that good. I mean, he's only 190 pounds and 6'9", so he definitely needs to bulk up. But I'm interested to see what he looks like next to Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, as well as Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. I think that if you're able to tap into the potential that is Imani Bates and tap into that number one overall pick potential, then you have the steal of the draft because you have a number one overall pick potential. You got him at 49. Now, again, I don't know because I do want to see what he looks like in an NBA system. I do want to see what he looks like going up against and having to deal with. I mean, he's a forward. So having to deal, even though it says guard, he's 6'9", he's a forward. Having to deal with, having to play a Paul George or a Kawhi Leonard one night, having to play Klay Thompson or Draymond Green the next, or Andrew Wiggins. I'm interested to see what that looks like. But if you're able to tap into that potential, you could have the ultimate steal of the draft. So, again, man, I want to congratulate everyone that did get drafted. And everyone that didn't get drafted, that's going to find their way onto a team, whether it's the NBA, whether it's the G League, whether it's overseas. If you're good enough to play, congratulations. Just being drafted doesn't make you or break you. And again, not being drafted doesn't either because, I just gave examples. Gabe Vincent, Fred VanVleet. Just because you weren't drafted doesn't mean that you can't make an impact. We saw how important Gabe Vincent and Max Strus and Duncan Robinson was to the Miami Heat in their ultimate NBA Finals run this year. And again, Fred VanVleet and how important he was to the ultimate Toronto title run. Now, I understand Kawhi Leonard was there, but Fred VanVleet hit really big shots in the playoffs. So congratulations to everyone that did get drafted, didn't get drafted, got on or will go undrafted and sign two-way contracts or go to the G League, go overseas. If you're going to continue to advance your career in basketball, congratulations to you. So before the draft and going into the draft, we had a big bombshell. And I think this is probably the first ripple effect or trade that we've seen that is directly in correlation to the new CBA rules. And that is, of course, Jordan Poole getting traded to the Washington Wizards for Chris Paul. We talk about the new CBA a lot, and what we talk about is you hear a lot of first apron and second apron. I talked about it on the show, but we know the first apron is pretty much being over the draft or over the salary cap to a certain extent, and the second apron is being drastically over the salary cap. And being over the second apron has drastic ramifications, like you can lose draft picks, you lose your ability to pick up buyout players. Like it's drastic ramifications. And Golden State found themselves, or the pretty much CBA was solely made to combat the spending habits of Golden State and teams like the Clippers, or teams that just throw caution to the wind and say, hey, we have enough money. We don't care about the whole salary cap. We'll just spend what we got to spend, and of course it'll ultimately win the championship. Well, when you pay Jordan Poole 4 years, 120 or 30 million dollars, you hope that this player is not only going to help in the present, which of course he did. He was a key part of Golden State ultimate championship run last year. But you hope that they are going to be key components in a key part of the future. What Golden State was doing something that was unprecedented, and obviously, as we see, it didn't work. What they were doing is they were trying to operate on two different timelines. They were trying to maximize the present while building for the future. And in sports and basketball, that doesn't work. If you're going to maximize on the present, you have to maximize on the present. And when you have to worry about the future when you're worried about the future. Or if you're going to worry about the future, the present can't matter as much because you're not going to be able to do anything in the present because you're so worried about the future. I.e., the Washington Wizards now. What they were trying to do is they were getting Porzingis and getting Bradley Beal and extending Bradley Beal and getting a Kuzma. You were trying to maximize the present. Well, the present wasn't getting you anywhere. So now as you see full rebuild, they're worried about the future. You see that with the Orlando Magic. You see that with the Detroit Pistons. You see that with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The thing about Oklahoma City is they got lucky and landed, due to a trade for Paul George. You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and you didn't know that he was going to be as good as he is. I mean, he was first overall. No, he was first team All NBA this year. So Golden State tried to do the whole we're going to plan for the future while maximizing the present. It doesn't work. So this trade is probably the first trade that is directly affected by the new CBA. And I get it. I understand it, especially when we talk about whole salary dump and everything. And it was just obvious that Jordan Poole couldn't coexist with Draymond Green. And it didn't. Hell, they traded Jordan Poole, and I don't think I've seen a thank you from Jordan Poole. You know how teams were like, thanks, or good luck on your next adventure? Like, I haven't seen that from any Golden State player. And we know, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, we know the class personified players that they are and that the Golden State Warriors organization is. I did not see one thank you for your services, Jordan Poole. And it's also funny that this trade came 4 days after Mike Dunleavy, who was the new GM of Golden State, coming out and saying that he wants he expects Jordan Poole to be there for the next 4 years. Minimum. So I'm guessing the 4 years turned into 4 days quickly. But the trade was, of course, Jordan Poole for Chris Paul, pretty much. I think Paul Baldwin, the junior or whatever, or the fourth or something, he was traded too. So let's talk about how this affects both teams. Let's first talk about the Wizards. This is a very interesting time for the Wizards because the Wizards have if you want to go back and see the rant that I had with the Bradley Beal trade, you can go back to last episode. I didn't know all this, there was more information that came out. So I felt a little bit better seeing with the pick swaps and just how many picks that they got. But Washington has been active, man. You trade Bradley Beal, you trade Kristaps Porzingis, but we'll talk about in a second as well. You also trade now Chris Paul for Jordan Poole. The Washington Wizards in full rebuild mode, and I didn't think that they would. I didn't think that they dedicate themselves to it, but they obviously have. They've been trade heavy, and I think Jordan Poole, the whole. It's the whole funny joke around social media is he's going to do numbers at Rose Bar. He's going to do numbers in the DC clubs, which I will say, basketball-wise, I think Jordan Poole will be terrific in Washington. I think Jordan Poole is one of those players where he just needs the green light and the freedom to do what he wants offensively. I talked about that when we talked about the whole situation with Jordan Poole and why it didn't work with Jordan Poole. I think that Jordan Poole is a player that he thrives off confidence and he thrives off the ability to make art with his speed and with his offensive weaponry. And now Washington doesn't really have a direction next year, so you have the ultimate green light, and I think that he's going to be incredible. I think that he's going to be I think he's going to be at least a 23 to 24 point scorer a game next year. I don't think he's going to take Washington any new heights, but I do think he's going to be he's going to be a very exciting piece to watch for Washington. I don't think it's going to result to wins or anything, but because I don't think Jordan Poole is a winning player. But I do. Well, let me not say that. Let me take that back, because I don't like the whole winning losing thing. Like I don't think that Jordan Poole's skill set, especially along with this team, can ultimately put the franchise in a direction next year that results in championship aspirations or playoff aspirations. But what I will say is Jordan Poole, to me, is a great player to be, just go do what you do. Just go score. So I think it's a good fit for Washington, because Jordan Poole has the freedom to do, and we know when Jordan Poole, we saw that when Jordan Poole's in the starting lineup, he's an incredible player. When he's not playing alongside Steph, he averaged damn near 25, 26 points, I think. But we'll see. Where I'm a little confused at is on the Golden State side. Again, I think that this trade was made solely because of, well, not solely, but mainly because of the new CBA. And Golden State didn't want to find themselves drastically over the second apron, or drastically in the second apron of the new CBA. But when we see the trade for Porzingis, and again, we'll talk about that in a second, and we see some of the other trades, and then we know just the type of player that Jordan Poole is, I just think you could have got more than a Chris Paul. And I think it's crazy that Chris Paul, who is a future Hall of Famer, who's one of the best point guards to ever play, has now been relegated to pretty much a cash dump. But what's confusing to me is the fit. Golden State is one of the fastest. I think they were like the sixth fastest offense in basketball last year. And we know with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and how Steve Kerr runs his team, it is a fast-moving machine. You're bringing in Chris Paul, who's not only going to be 39 years old in the playoffs next year. He's one of the slowest operating players. Like, he's one of the slowest point guards as far as he operates on a slow offense. He thrives with a slow offense. And I just don't know how that's going to fit with the Golden State Warriors style of play. On top of that, obviously they've had to have a conversation with him and Steph. I don't think they can. I don't think Klay Thompson is in a place, especially defensively, to play the small forward position. And I don't want to see Andrew Wiggins at the power forward position. I think that backcourt in Steph Curry and Chris Paul is just too small. And they already struggle defensively. I don't think that's going to make it any better. So I think that you're going to have to bring Chris Paul off the bench. But one thing that it's going to be tough, man, because one thing that I see is if you do bring Chris Paul off the bench, which kind of has to happen. If you bring Chris Paul off the bench, you're going to have two drastic ways of playing from your starting team to your second team. But you're going to have Jonathan Kuminga in the second team. You're going to have, Moses Moody as your second team. So I just don't know how that fits. Now, I did originally think that they were going to move Chris Paul again. But when you hear, but then again, Harry, you hear that they expect to keep Chris Paul. Okay. Well, they also did say just a couple of days ago that Jordan Poole was their future. So I just don't know the fit. I do like the fact of, if Chris Paul is able to change his game and speed up his game, which I don't think is going to happen, but you do get mature, offensive minded, and one of the best assist guards in the league. You do get him at your second team, so he can mentor maybe a Jonathan Kuminga and a Moody or something like that. I do like that, and I do like the fact of it just brings another ball handler, which is another reason why I don't think that he could work on the first team, because Chris Paul thrives with the ball in his hand. Draymond Green is the primary ball handler for the first team. You also have Steph Curry. That I just don't see it working. So I don't know, man. I hope Golden State's not done. What it looks like is Chris Paul might agree, or is probably going to agree to restructure his deal. Then if that case, that leaves maybe, Golden State maybe get someone like a Brook Lopez, maybe get someone like a Chris Middleton, but it's looking like Chris Middleton is probably likely to go back to Milwaukee. So I don't know, man. It's a weird fit, Chris Paul and Golden State, but we'll see how it goes. This is the new age of Golden State without Bob Myers, and this is obviously the first move. So we'll see how it goes. And another trade, obviously, that happened was the big Washington, the three-way deal. Washington gets Tyus Jones. Memphis gets Marcus Smart, and the Boston Celtics get Porzingis. And all you're hearing is let's talk about each team and how it affects them. Let's start with the Boston Celtics getting, of course, the best player pretty much out of that draft or out of that trade package, and that is Kristaps Porzingis. A lot of people are saying that the Boston Celtics should now be title favorites, definitely favorites in the East. I will say this. You're not getting a defender. You're getting a taller, better shooter. He's pretty much a better Al Horford and a younger Al Horford. But he's tall. He's like 7'3". I think I'm interested to see how he plays alongside Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and how he's able to fit in, and if they ask him to play defense, how that's. I thought Mike Muscala was going to be a big part of Boston. I was obviously wrong. So I do, and of course he's better than Mike Muscala by a lot. I think that this does definitely, or at least should, make Boston the favorites in the East. The only thing is I need to see how Porzingis plays defensively in this system, because we know that one of the biggest issues for Boston last year was defense and late game situations. So it does bring on another scorer and another shooter. But I don't know. I'm interested to see. I think that he could fit dividend, or he could fit seamlessly offensively, but what does that do defensively? And it allows you to take some pressure off Al Horford, who is about to be 40. So for Memphis, I also understand it. You drastically need a veteran in that locker room, and you also need a guard that is going to be able to take up or take the mantle for the team while John Moran is out for suspension or with suspension. And I think Marcus Smart would be really good. And Marcus Smart, as far as his defensive intensity, as far as just his sheer the makeup of who he is, fits Memphis perfectly. I think that it's a perfect fit for Memphis. I am interested to see what happens when John Morant comes back, and is Marcus Smart gonna be willing to take a bench role, because there ain't no way he's starting over John Morant. In my opinion, ain't no way he's starting over Desmond Bane, and I don't think Desmond Bane is tall enough, and nor do I want Desmond Bane to slide to this forward position where Dylan Brooks was. So, which that might happen. I just don't. How tall? How tall is Desmond Bane? Desmond Bane is 6'5". So I understand Dylan Brooks is 6'6", but I just don't want I rather Desmond Baines to stay at the 2, but more than likely they're probably going to put him at the 3 and move. So Marcus Smart probably is going to start. I don't know how that works offensively, but hey, it is what defensively it'll be pretty good, I guess. And for the Wizards, again, they're just doubling down on the rebuild, but they did get 2 really good guards. Again, you got Jordan Poole in the Golden State Warriors trade, and you have Tyus Jones, who is widely considered probably the best bench guard or bench point guard or backup point guard in the league. I think it's Washington is in a rebuild, and you're getting pretty good players, which I do like. So I think that I'm interested to see. We're still waiting on the Clippers. The Clippers are gonna have to make some moves as far as getting under the apron, and I'm hoping Golden State is not done. If Golden State's done making moves, then the championship window, in my opinion, is probably closed. Because they didn't address the biggest issue that they needed to address. Now, if they get Brook Lopez or they get somebody of his caliber, yeah. But hey, we'll see. But there you have it, man. That has actually no. I forgot it. This is the second episode in a row that I'm going to end with Damian Lillard. So all the reports that you heard from Damian Lillard was, of course, he wanted the Portland Trail Blazers to trade the 3rd overall pick because he just didn't want to be part of a youth movement. He wanted vets, and he wanted his opportunity to win a championship. And as you see, every championship team has a star, and of course is a team full of vets. It's very hard to win the league, and it's very hard for young players to turn into to winning or turn into championship level players, especially fast. And I thought that it would not be a smart idea for the Portland Trailblazer organization to trade the 3rd overall pick unless you were getting like a star, which I doubt. Yeah, bro, Dame, it's time to go, bro. It's time to go. I understand, bro. I understand. It is time to go. And I think what people fail to acknowledge and fail to understand is that people don't want Dame to leave because they just don't like Portland. They want Dame to leave because he is talented enough to make. Bro, you put Dame on Miami. You put Dame on. A lot of teams, they are championship caliber teams. You put Dame on Philly, championship favorite in my opinion, even with this Boston Celtics trade. But Dame just continues to do the whole loyalty thing, which, as we saw, i.e., did you hear Marcus Smart thought he was gonna retire or wanted to retire a Celtic? They sent him to Memphis so fast when they saw that they can get Porzingis, who is a better player than Marcus Smart. There is no loyalty in sports, bro. Leave. Because it looks like the organization, what it seems like is the organization and Damian Lillard are playing chicken. Like, they know the time is up, but the organization doesn't want to look bad and just ultimately trade Dame, and Dame doesn't want to look bad and say, I don't want to leave. Bruh, leave. It's actually kind of clear that the organization doesn't want Dame there anymore anyways. They want to start their rebuild. Because you get Scoot Henderson, who plays the same exact position as Damian Lillard. And I don't see Damian Lillard moving to the shooting guard position. I don't think Scoot Henderson is a good enough shooter to move to a shooting guard position. You also have Anthony Simons. Leave, Dame. Please leave. Please leave. And there you have it, man. That has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to if you're listening. Please subscribe to if you're watching. It definitely means a lot to me. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by my birthday. I'm close, man. A little over 100, man, or a little over 160, I think. So anything will help, man. I appreciate you guys. Also, please subscribe to the socials. Subscribe to TikTok. Subscribe to Instagram. Links in the description below. I drop content pretty much daily. Yeah, man. And until next time, much love.